This is actually a good Peugeot. I have not been this confused since I last went to the hairdressers. Hello and welcome to the review in a few of the Peugeot 3008. Now, you may remember the last Peugeot 3008, not because it was especially memorable or good, but more because it combined the characteristics of a crossover and an MPV, making it the world's first and only crossover. But this time around, Peugeot's ditched all traces of the MPV and just made it a standard crossover, because generally speaking, people want an MPV like they want a terrible pun. In doing so, the first thing that's happened to the 3008 is it's become much better to drive. So that's one less thing to get crossover.
I'm reporting you. I've got your registration, I've got you on camera. And it's Peugeot.
Not only is it better to drive than the old 3008, it's better to drive than most crossovers. Most Peugeots, in fact. For a start, it doesn't have that crappy French driving position where everything's just all wrong and the pedals are too close and the seat's at a funny angle. It's not just that it's got a fundamentally good driving position, it's that it manages to be idiosyncratic with it, which is quite an achievement. Usually the two are mutually exclusive. You're looking at the instrument panel over the top of the rim. In the 308, it's a bit wrong somehow. Here, Peugeot's perfected the concept, works really well, everything's clear, and the tiny wheel means it feels like you're driving an F1 car or something. Of course, this 5-seat family SUV type thingy is a million miles away from an F1 car, but it is the most sporty and most exciting looking of the lot. The distance between the steering wheel and the gear stick is like that. And again, that sort of adds to this feeling that you're in like a race car of some sort, weirdly. You may think it's hideous, but you cannot accuse it of being generic. Just saying. It will be tough to make a case against the cabin though, which is genuinely amazing. I love this cabin. Even down to things like the trim material that they've chosen. It's really nice, really different. Apart from the fact that they've called it the iCockpit. It's rubbish, that. Anyway, it's amazing not just by virtue of doing that spaceship thing that people like to talk about when they get into a modern car, but it does that while being very simple to use. And that's extremely hard to do, which anybody that's ever driven a DS5 will tell you. I've driven a DS5. Baffling. So this screen here is a touchscreen that holds a candle to an iPad for intuitiveness. Not literally. But it still has this row of buttons at the bottom as shortcuts for the stereo and the aircon and such, which is very useful. And the whole thing just feels really solid and it's extremely practical. You know, deep storage pockets, decent sized bins. It's massive too, lots of headspace, and a boot that compares very well to other stuff in the class. So, in conclusion, Peugeot has created the perfect crossover. Thank you and good day. Obviously not. This little wheel helps it feel agile, and at lower speeds it does do a pretty decent impression of a smaller hatchback, but it's still a bit rolly and lumbering when you're going quicker. Can't beat physics. And if you did want to get fussy, the low speed ride is a little bit firm for my liking. Other thing to say is that the 2-litre diesel is noticeably noisier than the 1.6-litre diesel, which is a bit annoying if you've spent more money on your car. You kind of want it to be the other way around. The trim levels start at active, which means there's no base model access version like there is in the 308. And that means the starting price looks high. See? That said, it does mean that you cannot buy a badly spec'd 3008. But more interesting than all that is the fact that they also all get a fully digital instrument display, which, as our John from the office put it,
imagine not having to spend £1,200 on a nice instrument display.
But probably the most important thing that this car has, and it's not on the spec sheet, is Feelgood Factor. How many crossovers have Feelgood Factor? None of them. But between the way it looks outside, this cabin in particular, and then the little details like the instrument display being digital and the tiny steering wheel, it's just really cool. It all adds up to something that is genuinely exciting. All this means is that you get a very alluring load of car for a mere £22,500, apart from maybe the piddly wheels, which aren't very alluring. Want to resolve that particular issue and you're looking at the even more alluring Allure spec, which gives you an extra inch there, plus a reversing camera and some more safety stuff. Speaking of which, this is a 5-star car according to Euro NCAP, although you'll see that the safety assist rating isn't that good. And that's because it's the basic cars that get tested, and basic cars don't have the Safety Plus pack. Beyond Allure, it gets sporty, starting with a GT line version and then going up to a GT version proper. Now, we'll not go through any more spec lists, because, you know, they're boring. But there are a couple of things worth saying. Starting at the top, the GT car comes with the most powerful engine, which is not at all surprising. But what is surprising is that that engine is actually a diesel, and it's not actually that quick on paper. It does feel quicker on the road though, and because it's a diesel, it's nice and efficient. GT line, then, you'll already have guessed, is the copy, but you can have more engines and it costs less money. Which brings us nicely to those engines. It's all very diesely, with 2 diesel engines covering 4 outputs. From a 99 to the 180 horsepower range topper. There are 2 petrols too, with the smaller 1.2 litre 3-cylinder here having won an International Engine of the Year category award for 3 years running. It's got a 3-cylinder petrol engine this as well, look at the size of it, and it's really strong, it really pulls. Nice. The higher powered 1.6 is automatic only. I think though that whatever engine you choose, it's clear that the range is impressive in both its scope and its general efficiency. I think this is the first genuinely brilliant, desirable Peugeot in a couple of generations. Obviously you could nitpick at it if you wanted to, but how many cars are this exciting while getting the basics right and being really good quality and really well priced and well spec'd? People who've got a couple of kids ask you what sort of car they should get when they find out what you do, and you just say Qashqai or Tekka or Golf. But this is pretty much going to be right up there with my standard list of recommendations. Love this car. Oop, I've turned the wipers on, getting too excited.